Hello everybody, my name's Scyushi, and today we're going to be focusing on the Sorcerer. The pre-order beta for Diablo IV has come to a close, but we're going to end up having the public beta anytime now. These videos are intended for those of you that didn't get to play the pre-order beta and might be coming into the public beta wondering which class you should play as. Keep in mind that while in the last beta we had access to 3 characters, during the public beta we're going to get the addition of the Necromancer and the Druid, which are going to end up being fairly complex characters that I will cover in time. For today we're going to be focusing on the Sorcerer. This is a strictly ranged class that for the most part will be built as a glass cannon, meaning that you'll be dealing heaps of damage while taking heaps of damage as well. This doesn't mean that you can't build the character defensively though, with a lot of different spells and enchantments that will end up giving you damage negation to either different elements or physical attacks. So the main pool of energy for the character is going to be mana, which will drain as you end up using all of your spells except for your base attack. And your base attack is going to end up generating mana slightly faster. The trick is that a lot of your abilities eventually will end up kind of complementing your mana regeneration. In particular, one of my favorite abilities was using the firewall, because the more firewalls I had active at a time, the more mana I had access to. It kind of forced me to use firewalls almost immediately, which did mean that I drained and expended all of my mana right away in order to end up seeing the profits after. Now, being a squishy boy means that you have to have some sort of survivability. Yes, you can end up using more defensive spells like fire or ice shield and so on and so forth, but for me in particular, being an OG sorcerer from Diablo 3, teleport was my bread and butter. Now, the main gimmick of the character is that all of your attacks are going to end up performing some sort of elemental damage. So lightning is really good for crowd control because it'll often end up hitting multiple enemies at once. Fire is going to be really good for damage over time effects because you apply a burning effect to the enemy, which can end up debuffing the enemy so that they take more damage. And then ice spells, which are going to end up being very, very defensive because as they end up tagging enemies, not only will they slow down enemies' attacks, their movement speed, but it also has a chance of freezing them temporarily. You do see very, very immediate benefits by speccing into one specific element. So I ended up being a pyro mage during the latter half of my time during the beta, because you can end up getting a lot of passive buffs that just give you more fire damage. But as we end up getting further and further in the main full game, it's going to end up opening up more options to not just stick to one specific element. And the funny thing is that by using different types of elements, you can end up making enemies more vulnerable and susceptible to tagging them with a different element. Now, Sorcerer was also the only character in the game during the beta that we were able to complete the level 20 quest that gave us the passive spellbook. This is essentially going to allow us to select one of our abilities or spells that will end up giving us a permanent bonus passive buff. One in particular I saw lots of people using was the Hydra buff, where after you ended up spending 300 mana, it would summon an additional Hydra. So in closing, if you want to end up having a character that for the most part is going to stay at a range and has to act really, really fast when enemies get up close and personal with you, then the Sorcerer might be for you.